इंसान परेशान सुनने वाला बेईमान इंसान परेशान फिर भी चालू है ये काम Hi Abhish,
Alright.
welcome back to session 2. How's it
Thank
going?
you. Going very well. This is like you are the time lapse of my work during Son of a Beach. So,
Indeed.
retrospectively, when I watch it, once the season is over, I'll be like, oh, this is what was going on. Oh, this is what was going on. So, yeah, thank you.
Yes, exciting times ahead.
It is. Yeah, looking forward to it also.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in. So, for today, let's talk about fame. And if you would allow me to just guide you in thinking through perhaps, fame with a lens of reality, fame in terms of its purpose, its usefulness, its price, desirability, and perhaps even to some extent the role that it plays in us becoming more self aware as human beings. Sound good?
Great.
Awesome. Okay. So let's start perhaps with the baseline. How do you define fame, Abish?
Personally, for me, fame means uh, being recognized in a room of strangers. Is what generically fame means for me, which is not like they need to know my name. That is one fame. They need to love my work, which is another fame. They have seen me somewhere, is a fame. They've heard about me somewhere, is fame. They've heard about somebody who fits the criteria that you fit to, is also fame. So, gone through various different kinds of fames in my career, fame point in my career.
Yeah.
But at the place where I'm right now, it doesn't mean like there is nobody out there who in that category applies to. Like, I've heard of this guy who does something. Is that you? There will always be gradient of fame. Fame is one of the gift baskets that come with the profession I'm in.
And we'll come
Or
to
the gift
that. We'll come to all of that. So in terms of how you define fame, that's how you would say it's been gradients of it in terms of recognition, acceptance with people around you and the way people perceive you. So would you then say that you're famous by your own benchmark now?
I am famous by my benchmark. I think I was famous by my benchmark in school.
Okay.
So I've been famous since a very young age because extrovert people are famous. Popular is a very different algorithm for me personally.
Tell me the
Um,
difference. How do you look
so
at
for
it?
me, famous is people know of you. Popular is that people connect with your opinion, your personality. Like the connection is there when you're popular. Fame is like anyone who, like for example, there are people who would murder people on live,
Yeah.
and then they're like, yeah, they become famous overnight. But popular is to build something slowly that people agree with, they like it, they dislike it, there's opinion, there's still like it's that is what I want. This anyone can get. There are unethical ways to get it. So when people get obsessed with the word famous, it's like getting obsessed with the word I want virality.
Yeah.
Can be viral because of whatever, but like famous and virality in the current text, popularity is people like you, people believe in you, people understand you.
So would you say you relate more to popularity than to fame? Should we change that word for our conversation?
I think so. I mean, it's good to have both of it. Let's have both perspectives of fame and popularity because that's my definition, not necessarily everyone else's. They're not mutually exclusive. I just feel like there is a Venn diagram somewhere. Uh, but for me, I would say I would any day be more popular than I would be famous.
You mentioned that you experienced fame back in school, the way you see fame and popularity. How did it feel? Talk me through what that was like when you first felt famous or popular.
And the first memory of that is when in church, I was very, very young. I went on stage wearing a sash which says Mr. Universe. holding a small stainless steel rod with two funnel, not the funnel that, that balls that you put inside a flush so that when the water rises, the
Yeah.
ball comes up and the water shot, old school flushes.
Huh.
Two of those attached. I went on stage, picked it up and went, "Ah," and I dropped it down and I did this. And there's a photograph of that which my parents still have. It's the first time I was on stage that I remember I was on stage. And I remember there was like applause, conversation post that. So at that young age, I really enjoyed that. So I guess that's the first time I was seen, so to speak, in a public eye, where I was like, ooh, I like this. So to answer your question, it sounds very big-headed, but I don't know what it is to be not famous.
And
Whether it's
how old
within
were
my
you?
family or five.
Yeah. And how old were you at this time?
I think I was in LKG, UKG, or one of those. I was very young. I was
Okay.
very confident even in family. The reason I could do it is at that age, you can put 10,000 people. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Because in my mind's eye, I'm looking at my parents. That's it. I'm just looking at their approval when I'm on stage. That's all I'm doing. They told me to go on stage, do it. I went on stage and did it. Then the applause and all came, and I was like, okay, my dad's fine. Okay, this is good. This is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was still very true. It's just like my parents are laughing, my parents are smiling, parents are proud. Similarly, I was popular within my cousins as well because I'll just be obnoxious and loud.
Mhm.
So I would say I tasted it very early because my parents put me on stage at multiple occasions. At that time, as my perspective, I didn't know what these words were.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
wasn't getting validated by them recognizing me. I just felt like when someone came up to me and said, "You're such a good actor," I'm like, "Oh, I'm a good actor." When I started music, when someone said, "You're a good singer," I'm like, "Oh, I'm a good singer." So that started happening. It was like it was like let's say a glass, very thin glass where you can barely see in the light. That's what I was as a kid.
Mm.
Each time I went on stage, there was the paint put on it, which I'm like, oh, so I'm a good actor. And if I'm singing and if oh, I'm a good singer. So then over the course of the years, that invisible glass is now visible because of opinions that people have put.
Mm.
But lucky in my case, these were positive opinions that I took back with me. I am a good performer. I'm a good singer. I'm a good actor. I'm a good dancer. All of these things people have told me. I
Yeah.
don't think I can do any of those really well. But I feel like because I've done it so many times, logically my brain says if you won 20 music competitions in school and say about X amount in college or whatever, then I know that they must not be wrong. Their opinion is right on me. Because I have so many awards. How else will I have these awards? That's the only way I was able to see the world, which I'm not saying is a good thing back then. But so I don't know
Yeah.
if I
I
was
mean,
popular or
with the
famous.
limited information that you were receiving from the outside, I mean, at that age, I can imagine you
But to
think,
answer your question, now if I look back,
yeah.
I think I became popular in church because of the mono acting. But it was my parents who became popular because the parents of the ones like this guy is so bold wearing underwear and a sash and just standing in church and doing this must be something. Because adults are looking at kids with atmos like, oh my god, so much confidence. They don't realize that kids don't know what lack of
Yeah.
confidence is. Because public opinion is just father and mother, and father and mother said go on stage. None of you matter. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going on stage because they told me, and I love it.
Yeah.
So I became popular in church because of that. But my dad was already popular as the secretary. So it was like a nepotistic popularity that I got.
So, just to understand how this played out for you, let's use this as a reference. How did, it make you feel? And if you can recall that feeling, and, as you went on to doing the various things that you did, starting from an RJ and everything thereon, how did that feeling evolve? Did it change? What was it like? Do you feel that initial feeling of fame, popularity that you received and that feeling it gave you, did that feeling stick on? Or what was that like?
It's a good question. I'll give you two perspectives. One is as the kid and as in retrospect.
Mm.
As a kid, I am sure there must have been some impact that applause must have had to get me at the age of 33 still doing this. right? Like it's impossible to be like, no, that I didn't care. I was too young to believe it. I know my conscious brain is saying that, yeah, it didn't impact you. You were doing it with your parents. Subconsciously, I know there must have been some dopamine hits that came with an applause or appreciation.
Yeah.
So 100% it changed who I was. So I genuinely think, I don't know if it impacted me as a kid, but I can assure you it impacted my parents. Imagine your kid going on stage with a bit you have rehearsed with the kid saying that, hey, all the best. You do it like it's like a code you've written. Now you're seeing it on stage with other programmable codes of kids doing whatever, whatever. And suddenly your code pops up saying, my code won it. Oh my God, this is great.
Yeah.
So you feel amazing because you just programmed it, but you didn't realize how it will react. And that software, which is me, was able to take that code and improvise and make it into something. So even for my parents, they must have been like, not bad. Not like, oh my God, he's great. But he pulled it off is itself is a huge compliment. So the confidence that my parents endowed me since that moment, I would like to believe, still stays today. That confidence that he will do it is what keeps me going till today. Which is why till today, every time I do a joke, I think about what will my parents think. Every time I say, I don't know if I can say, but every time I say fuck, right?
Yeah.
I know I'm saying that as a punctuation and not even as much, unless it's very stressful where the words just flow out. I know I don't do it as much for someone at my age and my friend group and everything. I do not abuse as much, but because there is that sense that you're doing it for your parents instead of you're doing it for the audience, which obviously now at this stage, popularity, fame takes over that I want to impress my parents and you make a lot of mistakes and stuff. Kind of going back to family friendly. I want people to watch me on a big screen with the entire family watching.
Yeah. And this is, not many people have this, and we'll talk about this on another day as well, that, you had this kind of support and your parents and you were in tandem in a sense. A lot of people are caught battling that in today's times. So yeah, I think that's fantastic. And we will come to that. That's something that I want to talk about in detail.
Every time someone tells me that, I have to battle with my parents to go open mics, I'm like, yeah, I just move out because I don't have that struggle.
Yeah.
I am so privileged with stage that it's just like, my parents had told a teacher once saying that, yeah, don't worry about Abhishek's grade, he'll do something on stage. And my parents like, yeah, I know, but still he should pass. And I'm there as a kid, grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, I don't know, grade 8. I was like, yeah, I'll do something on stage. Yeah, I'll do it. Till today, that holds true from their end.
So would you say that the feeling fame and popularity left you with was more of a responsibility? Do you look at it like that it was for your parents back then and it continues to be that? Or is there more to it apart from responsibility?
I think I never thought of it this way. It sounds very entitled to say it, but my brain is going like, yeah, it is a responsibility. I feel I am responsible for what I say, and I'm also responsible for what I am. And what I am needs to not just be rich and famous, for example, it also needs to be liked by parents. That responsibility is still there because in the back of my head, I still know my parents need to approve what I'm doing.
Is that the case?
It is still
till today.
Till today, if I'm doing anything, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it's good enough. Or I don't think there's a better way to do it. Let's not do this angle. I know it's important, but let's do something else. Still happens till today. The only debate I have with my parents is every time I put up something about, let's say, about the ill treatment of people in our country, then my parents get afraid for my safety. But once I tell them, don't worry about my safety, nothing's going to happen. If something happens to me, know that I did right in that situation. Just believe that, because once I'm dead, maybe no one's going to tell my story. Know that if you get to hear something ill about me, I have lived my entire life not doing anything wrong to anyone. unfortunately, a lot of people I have done wrong to, but it's never been intentional. But that log line of a human being is still alive because my parents are there. And I'm like, I can never disappoint them with the person I am. So stage is a huge reflection of it because that's my work is my life. I have nothing else going for me. Like I can burn the midnight oil and I can burn the morning candle at the same time without stressing, concerning, crying, weeping, bitching, nothing. Because I enjoy it. That's the only thing I have. And if I'm doing only that, then I need to make sure it's something that my parents should be proud of.
Interesting.
It's a huge log line till today.
Yeah. So if we were to say that, the fame and popularity that you have, would you attribute it just to doing it and maintaining that, status or whatever you get with that for your parents and how they perceive you and your career, or is there more to it?
There's more to it, but I don't think it's okay. Let me try to frame this because it is a slight bit of a thinker. I think fame and popularity are very addictive, and I tasted it at a young age without realizing that's my life. Because if you look at it, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is not to be on stage. I've been on stage since LKG till 33. Multiple times have I been on stages, different things. Mono acting, hosting, dancing, then music, then hosting, then radio, then comedy, then talk show, then like another reality, like a Comic Sun reality show. Now developing shows on the basis of how would I want it to be made how would you want? So I'm evolving at all times because that kind of validation and popularity and fame is good. But the root of that is because my parents put me on stage. Because if my parents didn't put me on stage, maybe today I would have been having a regular job and I would have had a 9 to 5 working in a different company. Because I wouldn't have known what being happy is. I tasted happiness when I was on stage. So I'm like, why would I do anything else? Not even with clarity, consciously, subconsciously, I was like, yeah, I'll do something on stage. I'll work for money, but I'll go on stage and perform.
So if you were to look back at the time when you started out as an RJ, was it, was fame and popularity a byproduct of what you just did and happened to do? Or were you consciously working towards that popularity or fame? I have a sense from what you've shared, but I'd like you to think about it.
I think I can say this confidently that in my formative years, nothing, and up till radio, let's say, nothing I ever did was to be popular or to be famous. Because those concepts don't exist with me. Because I am popular, I am famous in my family and in my school. So I don't know what it is not to be famous or popular till that time, right? Because the world is so small. Your microcosm is family. You're the loudest, you're the most popular. School, you're the most confident, you're the most popular. So I don't know what it is not to be popular. When I went to college, when I realized at that time where music had, now in college is where there was a year, first year of college is when from Father Agnell rock band, known, popular for music, suddenly doesn't have any college to go to. Went to Ramlal Anand College, but doesn't have a music department, didn't have any friends. My insecurity started creeping in. Because in school, I was so popular that I was trampling people without realizing it. I think I've told this many a times before. There was this in grade 12. When I was in grade 12, I've already done music for 3 years in school and we were winning music competitions and I was known enough in the circuit that my music teacher, who I owe my music career to, told me, give this kid who's in grade 10th an opportunity so that when you leave, they can learn how to take the legacy of the band forward. I remember saying, sir, rock bands have only one vocalist. My teacher's like, okay. But that must make me believe now that at that time, my ego must have been so high because I'm always popular. Why would I ever give anyone else the opportunity to be popular? Then in college, when I went in, when I didn't have any music, my band had like, I couldn't be with my band. They went to a different college and a way better singer they met there. I didn't get into any of the cool colleges who had music department. I went to a college which didn't have music department. So at that time, that 1 year took out that popularity of, I fell down from the heavens. And I was like, oh, this is what it feels to be not known. But even there, the grace was there because I was still known enough in my college as that guy who speaks in English, or as that guy who has a Christian name, or that some opinion or the other was painted on me, which happened to benefit me. That only in that 1 year. Because then I did some theater work with Babush Santana and Laura Santana. I traveled to Bombay. I was still like, because someone who was killing in music, now I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm doing sound effects for theater shows. I'm traveling. I'm living life. I'm excited by all the things that's happening, but nothing for popularity. Just for, I want to be on stage. Whatever I do, I want to be on stage. That desperation was there.
Yeah.
Second year is when I started applying to music competitions, debating competitions. In the first year I did, because I just wanted to be on stage. I picked up debating. I went to Pakistan. I went to Bangladesh to debate as a professional parliamentary debater because I wanted to be on stage.
Yeah.
So I went on stage. I did decently well there for parliamentary debating. Then I got back to music. Now I'm handling music and debate together. So now if you've asked me, I have just realized that desperation to be on stage I felt in first year college because I had no more opportunity. So I built an opportunity by building a new skill set for debating or theater, going and singing in the music box where everyone's watching them dance. I want to be on stage.
Yeah.
I was so jealous. I was like, I want to be on stage. And I used to chill with the dancers and the actors. And I was like, and it's a kids production, it's WYSIWYGS. So I was like, obviously I can't be on stage because for kids, but the dancers were professional college students, but all of them are women and good dancers. I was like, I want to do what they're doing. So I see what question you've asked me is a thinker. And thanks to that, I can tell you that in that first year of college, I felt the desperation to be on stage. Now, I am not sure if that desperation to be on stage was because that's where I feel the most comfortable or the most happy or the most visible, which gives you popularity and fame.
Correct. Yeah.
But I have an answer to that also, because this is the question I've asked myself again and again. If God comes down and asks you, would you rather be funny on stage or off stage? There is no commonality. There's only either or. I will pick funny off stage every time. Because I don't care about what I'll do on stage, because if I'm not funny, I'll go sing on stage. If I can't sing, I'll go dance on stage. If I can't dance, I'll go act on stage. If I can't act, I'll host on stage. If I can't host on stage, I'll go on stage. But I will be on stage. So I think that love for stage is still there because of something. And it's just the weird world that we're in, where if you're on stage, you're in a position of power. So it's like this weird alignment of my passion that fit with this thing that gives you popularity and fame, that then I was like, I know what I want to do. It's that perfect connection. I did lose my way midway. We'll get to that as well.
Yeah. So, okay, that makes sense. Family, popularity, then once you kind of got out of that nest, you realized you had to build a new benchmark for yourself because the scenarios were different and all of that. Now, what happens when you go outside of college? RJ, hosting, comedy. Was that another leap for you? How did you reinvent that, so to speak?
Even with the radio opportunity before I got employed in radio, I was, you know what my life plan was? Maybe to give you an idea, maybe you'll understand where popularity and fame are not in my level. It's not an important thing for me back then. My life was, I'll finish history honors. I will go apply to a call center because I can speak decently. I know that's the only thing I'll be good at, because again, I don't know any other option of any jobs that I don't have any, because nobody in my family, we're all figuring our own lives out, our own professions out. I said, I'm going to go join a call center. My brother did it, and he did it so well that he became a senior manager. Then he studied, and he now no more call center. Now he's project manager. But I was like, yeah, I'll do call center. I'll get 20,000 rupees as a senior. That's good. I'll perform with my band on weekends, and I'll go on stage and I'll host a few things in church. My life is going to be sorted.
Yeah.
So for me, I was like, I'll make money from somewhere else. Money I'll make. I don't care about where I make money. Even if I'm doing labor work, I'll make money so that I can go on stage. Because it doesn't need to be mutually exclusive. You make money out of this, but you go on stage. How is that different? That shifted with radio. Because in radio, it was very close to what I wanted to do, which is stage, but it was a stage with a microphone where I'm talking, and I was getting paid.
Yeah.
And then I was like, why would anyone do anything else? Because if I wanted to do stand-up, and I started doing stand-up during radio. Again, my life was simple. I will continue radio till 20, 30 years. I'll keep doing stand-up on the side. I'll put videos. Nobody's going to care. But at least I'm putting because I feel good about this joke. I want the people to see. There was no popularity as a concept. Then when I went to radio, when I became popular, it was the same because this is how I've lived my entire life. That's why I was like, yeah, like till today, I still stand true to the fact like I'm not that popular. Because there are other more popular people more than me. But even if you take fame and popularity away from me, even if you take fame away from me, popularity now is different. You take fame away from me, I'm okay. I need to go on stage, perform for the 20 people who've come. And if out of those 20, 3 of them remember me, come for the next one, I'll build again. The problem or the advantage of going again and again is like avalanche. You'll keep picking up more and more things and more things will fall off. But more people will come. You will hit a certain weight. You won't grow after that. Realizing that.
Yeah.
So for me, fame isn't that important.
Yeah.
Popularity, another question.
So clearly then it seems that you've been invested in the process of being on stage, reinventing yourself. Also, I'm hearing, working through your craft, whether it was radio, comedy, you've kind of worked through that and enjoyed that process, and popularity happened as a byproduct. Would you say so?
Yeah, 100%. If there was no recognition to it, and if it was just a maintenance job, still would have done it.
Yeah. And then this is an asset and an edge to have, this mindset, given that you work in a space that can tend to be driven by numbers. I mean, you were one of the first YouTube stars and YouTube runs on an algorithm. How do you look at that? Subscribers, views, and all of that.
That's why I said this is the act 2 of the story of popularity. Act 1 was always popular, didn't care, little struggle, figure it out. Act 2 is the failure, where I failed. When I became a comedian, I quit radio. When I became a comedian, was doing specials in Delhi. I think Sani and you guys had also come for a few shows that I'd done. It's popular in Delhi. You became popular in Delhi. That's more than I would have even counted for. I'm like, what? People know me? That's insane. I moved to Bombay not to become popular. I moved to Bombay because that's the only place I can go and do more shows. Like for me, after Bombay, the next logical step is New York and LA, where the most amount of performances happen. Acting, shooting, stage, stand-up, comedy, music. There's so much happening. There's entertainment hubs. But I'll tell you where the failure happened. Moved to Bombay. In Bombay, everyone is very popular already because you're in Bombay. So if you're one of the 10 comics, you're one of the top 10 comics in India. That's just how Bombay is. It just comes, Bombay commands that if you're here and if you survive, you're better than the rest. Which I would have probably said is balls, but I'm like, I see why. Because the industry is small, how they figure it out small. So I'm like, okay. When I came to Bombay, I wasn't doing very well in my stand-up because I was a very acquired taste in Delhi. Because I was popular in Delhi, people were coming to see a popular guy do stand-up. So I could do whatever and people will laugh because they know context of who this guy is. When I came to Bombay, it was a reset button. Same as first year college. Except now I've committed to a profession. Because if in Bombay, if I came in just to move to Bombay, I would be like, I need to go on stage. but I can join radio, or I can go to a copywriter. I can write ads. I'll learn it and I'll do it. I'll be shit at it, but I'll learn, but I'll go on stage. But I came to Bombay as a professional upgrade. There's no backing out. So then how do you quantize success at that time? In my head, numbers or credibility within the scene. Before numbers, my numbers were all the comedians should think I'm a good comedian. So then all my jokes became political, slightly weirded, worded, and I wasn't like earlier. I was so free flowing and judgmentless because I want to be weird on stage because I know I enjoy being zany. But on Bombay, I became everyone's looking at me because no one is looking at me. I just thought everyone's looking at me.
Yeah.
That's when I think that dark shift happened in my career, which is when I stopped listening to what I like and start listening to what other people like and the kind of jokes they like and the kind of jokes they do and the kind of opinions that they have and the kind of this thing and the effects of that. Then I got so hell deep into, have to be a writer. I started typing and I'm like, I became too cerebral, which is why Journey of a Joke or I studied comedy because of the fear of imposter syndrome. What if they realize I'm not a comedian? I'm just a loud and overconfident guy on stage because I'm not nervous on stage. I'm the most comfortable when I'm on stage. But for other people, I was like, no. What did they find out? I just have confidence. I don't have jokes. Then I'm not a comedian. Then I'm a hack. All of this was going on. That is just an industry in general, and all comedy industries across the world have. And I fell into that. At that vulnerable time is when numbers swept in. Twitter. How many numbers do you have? I don't know. Well, I've got this much, so I'm bigger than you. I'm like, oh, I guess you are. Then I started I need to become as popular. How? Get as many numbers. That's how. What you consider today's norm, I went through that transition because we literally started what the number game was. And so for me, I saw that in my vulnerable spot. I took numbers as my success guarantee. And I started working to get those numbers.
Yeah. And when was this? How many years ago?
This is 2000 and let's say 11.
Okay.
2011 is when the number and all of that number and comedy. 11 and 12 is when I started figuring that I need numbers to be popular, not just the fact that I didn't need numbers, no, before this. Radio, I didn't need numbers. I was doing radio, I was popular. Before that, I was doing music, I was popular. Before that, I was in school, I was in college, like in church, and I was just doing and I was popular. First time it was about, yeah, you're doing what you're doing. We're all doing what you're doing. How many numbers do you have? And I was like, what? I never took this into consideration in my life at all.
Yeah.
And then numbers took over. Algorithms took over. Brain took over. Gut. I killed my gut. I was like, doesn't matter if you're funny. What are you saying? What opinion are you doing? What tag are you using? What clever wordplay are you using? All of those things started playing out, which still remnants of that is still there. But that's when I became desperate for popularity. Before that, I didn't care about popularity because fame was always there. And I was liked by my family. There is no other metric. Here, it became about being popular. Being popular means people liking you, people having opinion that you are smarter or nicer. That trap that started in Bombay. Also, living alone, like, if you're with parents, they keep you in check.
So
living alone.
Are you saying that this was a time when you kind of gave up on that rhythm that you had picked up in terms of enjoying the process, and you got into catering to what was required for this fame, for this popularity, for the numbers? And this went on for how long?
I think you said it right. I think I lost the joy of creation and the anxiety of deadlines and the anxiety of doing and the guilt of not doing. That took over. Not doing enough, or whatever you're doing is not good enough.
Yeah.
That is still not gone.
So this is interesting when you say this, because I think to some extent when we are talking about working towards fame and popularity and optimizing for that, we think we're optimizing for that, and actually it wouldn't be a problem if we were, but somehow we think, or subconsciously we start optimizing for acceptance, self-worth, love even. And I think that's where the trouble comes in. If we had a tunnel vision for this, wherein we said that it was actually just the numbers, and we were able to disassociate a lot of this stuff, that what do people think about me, am I good enough, it might still work without us getting unhappy and anxious and all of that. I think all of this comes together is where the mashup and problem happens. Have you felt this? What is your sense with this in the last decade now?
Yes, I have felt that. I think it's like, you know what, like you only said, if my, who am I is defined by how many numbers I have, is what Bombay did. It defined me to a influencer. It defined me into, your money is coming as in, you're promoting brands, so you're an influencer. I'm like, that's not what I wanted. I just want to go on stage and make people laugh or sing or do something, create something that doesn't exist. How about creating something that doesn't make money? Which is where Son of a Beach came in, just much later, which is my act 3. This is my desperate moment where, like you said, I started giving validation to the numbers that I have, numbers that I need to have, popularity that I need to continue with. Because everybody here was according to me, was operating on that same level. How many numbers do you have? How many followers do you have? Do you have a blog? What kind of tweet? How many retweets did you get? How many blog posts did you get? How many articles? How many TV stations have you worked with? How many scripts have you written? How much have you this? How much? It became a how much. Then who are you? Then what do you want to do? Because it was so defined. Also defined by kids only, my age.
Yeah.
But their definition of success came with numbers. My definition of success came with applause on stage. That is why for me, stage is not a place I want to earn money. I just want to go there. I'll earn money doing other things. So like you said, it is very true that my metric of happiness shifted to numbers, which is where everything came crashing down. Because if I want to create something that's genuinely fun, now I have to think of how tight it is, who's going to act in it, what kind of, it becomes about numbers than about, let's just shoot this. This will be fun. It'll be great. That joy of creation isn't there anywhere except the things that I'm starting.
Yeah.
And that's happening
now.
In the lockdown, when I made season 7, is when I was like, this is what I really like. Not the numbers. Season 7 has got the least numbers of all the seasons of Son of a Beach. It's given me one of the most happiness. I mean, other seasons of Son of a Beach have given me a lot of happiness because of the team that I worked with. The clarity that I had none, they had clarity. So they gave me what the show needs to look like. In season 7, I knew what I wanted because I was at home. And it's a show that I have. Nothing is stopping me than me. So I just said, this is the camera, this is the laptop, this is the mic, let's just run the show.
Yeah.
I don't know how many views this season has gotten. Usually every episode, I know how much it gets. I have no idea. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the comments this time. So I know I've changed. But now with the new season on Netflix, because it's on Netflix's YouTube channel, there is a little bit of nervousness about, numbers, because why else am I there? I'm there for numbers, right? I mean, it's a fun show, good collaboration. We'll pitch, we'll promote each other. But if it gets 10,000 views, it is going to be a problem. For the money is to the popularity of the show, is to the views. So now that little bit of number thing is coming up again, but I'm trying to be cognizant of that, saying that deliver them a good show that gets them numbers because they are funding it. But you hold true to what you find happiness. Is that, did you do a good job on that show? So numbers is unfortunately there.
Yeah. But this is also the reality of things, right? It's, I don't think we can operate at this end or that end realistically, unless of course you're in a very fortunate space where you don't have to care about money at all and you have complete, free play as to what one does. But then, yeah, like you said, this has to be, you have to have a way of, and this is your profession and your core work. So it has to be kind of in a way balanced, while I think just being aware that what are we attaching these numbers to, like what do these numbers mean? Is it just for the business and what that stands for, or are we, kind of
Mm.
getting too involved in it? Are we becoming that number? So I think that distancing becomes important. And I mean, I'm totally new to this space. Just started uploading videos 6 months ago. I've had completely different careers. But it's interesting, just the self-awareness and how handy it can be. I feel, and I'm talking with like 200, less than 200 subscribers, right? Even then, I feel like as somebody who's new to a space, you tend to try and understand what do you need to do to get views or reach out to more people. And sometimes the algorithm, or in your case, it could be brands, want
Mm.
you to do certain things to be successful, which you can either
Mm.
choose to do, or you kind of opt out, or you do it in a certain proportion. But to be able to take that call, you need to be aware of what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So for me, in this very small context and exposure that I've had, I could all, kind of see myself making a choice of, okay, do I want to engage this much on social media or that much? And if I don't, I'm consciously giving or giving up that upside in terms of the opportunity. But it's a conscious decision one makes. And I can imagine, the stakes are high with respect to Netflix and, all of that.
When we made Out of Syllabus, which is an animated thing, which costs us 5 lakhs every for 1.5 minute animation or 2 minute, it costs, and this is reduced cost. All friends are working on it.
Mm.
I still put it. It gets 12,000 views, 13,000 views for 5 lakhs worth of investment. I've done 3 of those, and I'll continue doing so because I know that impact that it might have is not a global impact, because that video has no global impact. But even if that one person has that impact, 5 lakhs is not worth it. 5 lakhs is not a problem because I learned it from someone else. That feeling is what I chase. It's what you call a superhero complex, where I'm like, I did something at a certain cost which helped someone. I can go to sleep. It's not numbers for me anymore. I've got my numbers, I've got my popularity. Other comedians have gotten popular. People who come after me have gotten popular. But our metric of popularity is wrong. Our metric of popularity isn't how many people know you, how many people follow you, how much money do you make. It's about, is there somebody, how many thank yous will you have in different people's autobiographies? I don't want anyone to do a movie on me. I just want to be in the special thanks of many movies, which are autobiographies of other people. That, for me, is now my metric of life. And that's been my metric of life for a very long time. Numbers were needed for money and for popularity, and that ego and that jealousy crept in. Now I'm not jealous. When my friends used to travel to the US for shows, I used to mute them because I used to feel jealous. Now I don't, because now I'm happy for them, because my metric is different now,
Mm-hmm.
which is a bad for career, I must tell you now. I know a certain number of I need to maintain a certain amount of number of people. And I want to maintain like what gives me joy in a way that what impacts people. If I work with 70 people in a show, I'm like 70 people are employed during a pandemic because of a show I started 5 years ago. Blows my mind till today. During pandemic that we're doing season 8. I'm like, how? I did this because I bought a camera. I cannot believe 5 years later that this is 70 people during pandemic have a job. I like from you. It sounds too big-headed, but you need to understand the modesty of where I think Son of a Beach is. For me, it's still a living room thought. So you see how that's a good ideal scenario in retrospect.
Yeah. And this is where I was saying that self-awareness as to when numbers are important and when you give a little bit that you may or may not be comfortable doing, or you're kind of okay to make your peace with, while at the same time retaining, a sense of, the art or the impact that you want to have. And I think this is where self-awareness, and which is what I was saying, even in my case, with whatever little scale of, say, do I post 5 times or do I post 1 time, but even something as small as that, self-awareness can come in so handy and critical, because you know what to choose. While it's so easy, I feel, to get caught up with what's the right thing to do. And you will only get validated based on opinions and expertise from outside to say, yeah, you must do this in order to get this XYZ result. But then again, like we said, right, happiness isn't tied to that. And one needs to know what is happiness for you, and what's going
You
to bring you joy.
you put up you wrote something, you felt good, you wrote it, you put it up as a promo for this, the first episode of this. I mean, just look at you instead of me for a second. It you see that the passion that you felt, you wanted to put it up, and now when you're looking back, you're like, oh my god, what did I just do? But you did. That is me living that same thing, same as you, except that now this is my job, where I get the opportunity every day to feel this good, but I can't feel this good every day because then I'll be broke.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
mean, of
money
course,
is a
I don't
thing,
have
and
that
popularity is a thing.
responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I have to be like, oh, I need to do this. But every now and then come back to it. So I feel like, to answer your question, your example is the answer to this entire thing. There is no ideal case, but I know there is an ideal case. For you, the objective of putting that rap, I don't know what it was, but it's out there and it sounds good. It's well written.
But then that's the
It's
thing,
got
right? For
multi.
me, I'm not answerable to anybody. So if it came through me, I put it out because to an extent, I don't really care.
Same. When I'm on stage at that time with the mic in my hand,
Yeah.
I am accountable to me.
Yeah.
There's an audience that I'm entertaining,
Yeah.
and I'm also entertained myself. Before I go on stage, I'm always nervous. I'm always thinking, why do I do this for a living? But I go on stage, people applaud even if they don't know you. You take the mic and you say the first few words, you get a chuckle. You're like, you get that first big laugh, and you're like, this is why I live for.
Yeah. Yeah.
All that anxiety and the nervousness before is telling you why, because when you go on stage and that happens, you're like, oh, this is why.
Yeah. And also that there is no end to this, right? I mean, again, this is something that I've seen. People with 100K want 1 million subscribers. People with 1 million want 10 million. Do you have a sense of how you look at this? Is there an enough or a sense of that I will be comfortable with this, and hereafter, whatever comes would be a
Yeah.
bonus?
I'll be very honest. This is where I thank the fact that I really like science.
Yeah.
The word, when it's 10,000, I want 100,000. When I was 100,000, I want 1 million. I got 1 million on YouTube. I didn't celebrate it because I was like, it's been 9 years. I've lost the interest in numbers, because the one realization that happened in mathematics was math is the only thing that you can quantize. Like, you can put money is math, followers is math. So if math is what you're going after, look at the highest math. It's infinity. It's an unimaginable number.
Yeah.
It's called nihilistic. It's like nihilism, right? If you're going to die one day, nothing matters. Nihilistic optimism, you're going to die one day, nothing matters. So everything matters right now. Similarly, the biggest number you want to go up to is infinity, which is an imaginary number so big that you can't quantize it. Then the feeling of numbers goes away.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Son of a Beach episodes, I'm like, 1 million to banta hai. Matlab, because it was 1 million for so many seasons.
Yeah.
And then the numbers started going because the long form videos didn't do well. Maybe as a format, it didn't do well. Maybe I wasn't good enough. I don't know, many reasons. Numbers started going down. Now with the new season also, I'm like, I wish I get 1 million so that at least it doesn't look bad. 1 million has now become like okay, not bad. Anything below 1 million for me is now become failed video.
Because you've set that benchmark previously and achieved it.
Yeah.
Right?
But when I do Journey of a Joke, I don't care how many views it gets because there's no benchmark.
Yeah.
So someone like me, who's a serial inventor who wants to create, I'll create. Okay, it works. I'll create another thing. Okay, it works. I'll create another thing. Okay, it works.
Yeah.
Because if I keep doing one thing again and again, then the success of that is based on numbers, which is something I want to dissolve myself. But it does come in, like every now and then. How many numbers do you have? Somebody else with a bigger number gets the opportunity. So it is a constant battle between numbers, whether it's followers, viewers, whatever. Just numbers and feelings. Because feelings you cannot quantize currently. unless you put it into numbers, how many dopamine hits have happened. That's what I said. Numbers
Yeah.
you can quantize, but a
Correct.
feeling or a gut you cannot particularly quantize in this level. So I'm like, I have no control on this. I have no control on this. This gives me anxiety. This gives me joy. So, I need you to survive, but I need you to live. So if I go to this, I'm only surviving. And if I'm doing this, then I'm living. But it's that it'll be a nice, like a balance. Sometimes numbers are more, this is lesser. Sometimes this is more, numbers are lesser. I don't never will ever be a project where both are equal. There'll be something where this is too much and this is too little, and this is too
Yeah.
much and this is too little.
Yeah.
But that breathing
Yeah.
is what I think an ideal situation
Yeah,
is.
and that's fantastic, and we'll talk about this in our in the next, when one of the coming sessions as well, on how one manages this. And I know you have a strong meditation practice, and we'll talk about that as well. But this is the key, like what you said, this movement, not always do you want it to be 50-50. There may be times when money is more important. There may be times when you need to feel more fulfilled and you have enough, to kind of. So again, I keep coming back to that self-awareness and knowing what you need at what time, and sometimes not getting what you need and being able to cope with it, just knowing why you're doing what you're doing because it serves the business need, while not being too attached to it and knowing that you can come back. I think there's this that constant awareness. If it's there, it can serve us from a mental health standpoint.
I feel like this happiness is not like this when it comes to money
Yeah.
or popularity.
Yeah.
There's so many other metrics. How much time have you spent with family? It's this.
Yeah.
How much time have you spent with friends? This. So
Yeah.
who is to tell what is
Yeah, and
success
that's
in
the
this?
reason I didn't even get into happiness, because that's, I think the two are not linked, and we don't need more famous people up there, shouting it out loud enough that this is not the place you find happiness. It is not connected. And unfortunately, that narrative is out there, and we have this glamorous picture about fame, and we spoke about this, right? Self-worth, happiness attached to it, only to realize that's not where it is.
If there's anything I'd like to say towards the end about fame and popularity, is fame and popularity are very addictive, and they'll give you enough reasons for you to stay famous and popular. It is the toughest thing to consciously disappear. When you've tasted what it is to be loved, venerated, celebrated, excited for, and if you can let go of that, then I think it speaks more volumes of you. I haven't gotten there yet, because fortunately, but I think I'm making some choices in my life which is enabling me to remove myself from being popular and famous and just be behind the scenes, work on the things you like. You like to go on stage? Go on stage. Who told you to put up a comedy video? Don't put it up. Go on stage. That's true.
Is
If you
there a
like to,
price, though, that you feel you pay for fame and popularity?
addiction, and you lose uh, people closest to you. Fame and popularity means narcissism. Even if you don't like your work, you dislike your work, it's still your work. You're still thinking for yourself. And I think with fame and popularity, whether you're honest about it, whether you're malicious about it, whether intended or unintentionally, is the more you fuel it, the more it severs relationships. All my personal relationships that last till today is because of the efforts put by them. I barely message anyone saying, hey, how are you doing? I get messages from how are you doing, and I choose to respond. And that's not a good way of living life. That's why I say people say you're a nice guy. I'm not a nice guy. I'm just surrounded by amazing people who are relentless to stay close to me. There is no reason I need to have friends in my life when I have people I work with and stuff. That is what I want to remove. That if I can disappear and if I can be happy, all the learnings that I've done are not going to go to waste. I'll imply it somewhere else. I mean, I'll put it, invest it somewhere else. but it is very addictive. As much as I realize it, I'm working on something that'll hopefully make me disappear, even if it's for a year. I'm not saying a lifetime. Do you just, I can't imagine disappearing for a year. Like, I can't, but now I can because I'm wanting to. No damage has happened. Nothing bad has happened. I'm just overwhelmed with how much effort people are staying in touch with me for. I just want to do it for myself when the time is right. Disappear. Not because some shit happened and disappear. At the peak of it, at the happiest moment of your professional career, disappear. No reason, no nothing. Everyone to know that you're well. I am fine. I'm done. This is good. I enjoyed being popular since I was a kid till now. And I'll still be popular even if I'm in a company or if I'm doing something. I'll still be popular with the people around me. But if I had a family and if I had a kid, I might have done that earlier. Or maybe not. Maybe I am so addicted to being popular that when the moment comes, I'll chicken out. But in the back of my head, I know that do you have it in you to give up everything?
So you feel it has impacted your relationships because you perhaps can tend to get consumed in what you do and it becomes about you. Is that what you're saying?
That is one of the many things that popularity does. You become self-obsessed. Your priority of your career is over anyone and anything. And if I've been justifying my work by saying, look, it's popular and money and parents are happy and, giving this and that, then you're not different from anybody else. Then why are you meditating? Then why are you praying? Why do you believe in God? And go and do your other shit. No. But if I am meditating, if I'm praying, if my parents are allowing me, if I have great friends, everything is amazing, it's giving me the opportunity to think higher and maybe get to a point of self-actualization where maybe I need to take a break and just not take a break. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is all that I wanted to do. But I know in my heart what I really want to do. There are a few things I want to do. Maybe I'm done. Maybe I'm not done. I don't know it. But even to think that I am done was really nice doing all of this.
Yeah.
Such a scary thought is what I wanted to leave.
These are big questions. These are definitely big questions. It's not a overnight thing. Fun times. It's exciting to think that you're going to be thinking through all of this. And I look forward to seeing how it uncovers.
Yeah.
But just one last thing that was coming to mind was, Abhish, have you found fame to be useful or purposeful in any manner? Or popularity for that matter?
Yes. And I think I'm proud of that as well. I think I have used, again, this, I'll say big, this might make it sound like I'm big-headed, but I can say it because I'm big-headed about this. I have used my fame and popularity to give fame and popularity to people. I've used my fame and popularity to get money and give it to people. I've used my fame and popularity to talk about things that no one else is talking about. I've used my fame and popularity to bring light to a team when I've used my fame and popularity as a reflection board because I am already very validated. I already have great opinion of myself. I don't actually. What I meant is that I don't need more. I know what it is. Since I was a kid, I have a glass full of validation you give me, I'm happy. I don't need to get a tanky full. But I'm getting an overwhelming amount of popularity, money, success. What am I going to do with this? I have nothing to do with what am I going to do with all that? I am good at getting and giving, which is something I've done with my popularity. I'm still very selfish. I'm not saying my cup became a mug became a jug became a vase, but I'm still getting tunky. So for my requirement to get to tunky, luckily because of the way that my parents have programmed me, it's going to take some time. And I hope I don't get there or my time gets over before that. I don't know. but I have, and I can say I have used it. I'll give you examples. Outer Syllabus is an animated show, which is a lot of money. I'll put it. I know it. It is good. We should do it. Family. Every time they need help, every time I need help, they're there for me. Why wouldn't I help them? Fortunately, I have the grace of getting work, which is giving me money that I can now give. Like, it's weird, a tweet of mine that I put out or a post on Instagram is more than someone's salary these days. You just fathom the imbalance in monetary with other people. Other people are getting a lot more. I'm looking at, I am the middle part of the entire, just the comedy industry.
In absolute terms, yeah.
But even for someone like me, I'm like, this is enough for me. I'll give it wherever. Push comes to shove, I'll skim down, I'll go to my parents. I have no, like, my worst case scenario could be my best case scenario.
Yeah. And I've seen you do that. I mean, even with, recent episode on Son of a Beach season 7, taking opportunities where you can to put out messages even, or commentary on society, on how things are in the country. I think all of these things count because people are tuning in. And this was coming up as well, right? That you have such a massive following. What do you think people are following you for the most? If I were to say, think about perhaps one key thing that people follow Abish for, what could that be?
I have been popular for so long that it's multi-phased. Lots of people followed me because of AIB and the sketches. Then they followed me for the roast. Then they followed me for Son of a Beach. Then they followed me for Comicstaan. And now, hopefully something else comes up. So I don't know which era you're talking about, because I went from a 10,000 to 100,000 to a million at different points in my career. So I don't know if I'm answering it correctly, but because there are different phases of it.
Correct. Yeah. So I think it's probably difficult to pinpoint which aspect of your personality or which aspect of your being people connected with, because perhaps it happened at different stages. And like you said, it was over a course of a decade almost that you grew the following that you did. So yeah, and I can imagine you evolving through that decade as well. Thank you, Abish. Thank you for taking my barrage of questions and for allowing me to dig deeper and being patient with it. And we'll be back with another topic.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Also,